I'm guessing this wasn't 2020 that this happened, was it?
It was. No, it was. So his team basically made us kind of gel our hands before we kind of shook his hand.
Hey everybody, it's John Lamberton here alongside my good friend and business partner, Mr. Jason Brockman. We are here for another episode of the Ambitious Lifestyle Business Podcast, where as always, it is our job to help you get more customers and make more money without just working harder. So without further ado, let's dive straight into this month's episode.
Today's guest is Emma Walton from Riviera Tuition in sunny Torquay. Now, Emma's business has grown up alongside her children over the last 10 years. She's won many awards along the way. She's met Theo Paphitis and Sarah Davies from Dragon's Den. She's helped hundreds of children, particularly those with special educational needs, in a way that suits them. And most importantly, has designed her business as an ambitious lifestyle business to deliver the lifestyle that she truly wants. Emma, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, John. Thank you.
Cool. It's great to have you here. We've not told any lies in that introduction about the fact that Torquay is always sunny, have we?
No, none.
You always said that with a straight face.
Almost as sunny as Plymouth is.
Glorious. Yeah.
I love because normally it's days like today where it's grey and horrible outside. Jason's normally got his glorious virtual Zoom background of Plymouth Hoe in the sunshine, blue sky, not a cloud in the sky, haven't you? Good. So, Emma, 10 years of Riviera Tuition.
Yes.
Do you want to take us back to kind of how you got started?
So I started the company when I was pregnant with my first child. So I was working in schools and we were due to have our first baby. And then 3 months later, when he was born, I discovered that I was pregnant again. So I have two children who are now almost 9 and 10, who are 11 and a half months apart. So obviously due to, wanting to look after my children and nursery fees being as they were and teachers' salaries being as low as they are, I just thought, you know what, I want to carry on teaching and carry on doing what I love, but it's just not going to be financially viable for me to put my two children in nursery full time and then work full time. I was literally kind of, being paid to put my children in nursery and that would be it.
Wow.
So that's kind of how it was born, is the fact that I didn't want to lose my craft really. I wanted to kind of carry on teaching. And I did. So throughout their kind of babyhood, my husband would go out to work in the morning and, for the whole day. And he would come home, then I would kind of go out. So we were kind of like passing ships in the night. But it kind of allowed me to do what I enjoy doing, which is teaching.
So that must have been some upheaval to think, right, I'm going to have a child. Cool. Oh, actually, we're going to have two children and I'm going to quit my job.
Yes. Yeah, it was.
What enabled you to actually make that happen then? Was it just literally born out of necessities like this? I have no choice.
It was because, so my wage would have equaled exactly the fee to put them into nursery. So I thought, well, actually, we're not going to be any better off. And actually, if I work some hours at the weekends or in the evenings around the children, then we would be better off. So it kind of made sense to do it. But I'm pretty sure, hand on heart, I would never have made the leap had I not had children so close together. I probably would have stayed in school. Yeah.
How were your energy levels at that time with, let's go forward a couple of years maybe, or even, 18 months when you've got two children under 2 and a new business?
I've just always been really weird in that I can work pretty hard and cope with little sleep, which is what kind of happened. I don't think I could do it anymore. I think if I was to have two kids now, I would be exhausted. But obviously I was younger then. So I think I had kind of more kind of get up and go, really.
Yeah, the youthful energy.
Yes.
I think it's probably similar. When I started my business was, just pull all-nighters, work the 100-hour weeks, do whatever is necessary.
Yeah.
I almost used the hustle word there. But I think you do. In the early days, you just say yes to everything and you do anything that just has to be done.
So yes, so I think that in those early days, you do have to hustle slightly because it is needed. You need to bring in the money. You need to get it kick-started. And it's not until you get into your stride that you can start to think about kind of building your business around what you want. But I think in those early days, you do have to put in the time and the hours. Yeah.
The priority is just making payroll, isn't it? It's just, how do I keep the doors open?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Do you think you made any mistakes back then when you first kind of fell into business when you were pregnant, and then kind of how that was going to look? Have you changed the business model considerably in the 10 years? Was there any kind of mistakes you made?
This is going to sound really arrogant, isn't it? I can't think of any.
No, I am always good at what I do, and that is it. There's no mistakes to be made.
I'm pretty sure I have along the way, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. I think probably a mistake would maybe be putting too much pressure on myself, perhaps. I'm not listening to my own body at times when I need to take time out and kind of just unwind. I think one of the mistakes that you can get kind of pulled into is this idea of wanting to kind of keep going, and maybe kind of listening to every kind of business podcast, every book, and you just get so kind of bogged down in it all, don't you? So I think, maybe that's a kind of mistake maybe that I used to do that I don't do anymore. So I now read kind of like fiction novels and I totally turn off. I haven't read a business book probably about 6 months, which I probably shouldn't be saying to both of you. But I just find that, I think I've learned that you need to listen to your own body and what your brain needs to function at such a high level. Yeah.
I think you've got about 9 months to wait until you have to read another business book, because that's when John's new one comes out in about 9 months' time. So 9 months.
Ideal.
Well, 1% is going to get advanced copies, so you've probably only got about 5 months.
Okay, exciting.
But it's a very interesting point you make, Emma, because literally I saw a post on social media earlier today from somebody saying exactly what you've just said. I'm listening to all the podcasts. I'm reading a book a week, and I'm listening to all these podcasts and I'm watching these TED Talks and I'm getting all this information into me, but I can't seem to get started. I can't seem to actually pull the trigger and take any action. And probably the reason for that is because you're learning how to do things perfectly from all these people that have spent decades doing it. And you're taking on all these frameworks and you're not actually putting one foot in front of the other. One of my favorite Derek Sivers quotes is, if more information were the answer, we'd all be billionaires with perfect abs.
Yeah, definitely. Sooner
or later, you've just got to say, well, I'm not going to be as good as this person whose book I've read or whose podcast I'm listening to, but what I am going to do is get started. I'm going to do something.
Yeah, I think you kind of always need to focus on the things that's gonna make you money and push you forward. I think you can kind of get bogged down in doing things that aren't necessarily going to push you forward all the time, can't you? Yeah.
Exactly. And sometimes you need to actually recuperate, rest, step off the treadmill, step off the hamster wheel, and have that little bit of R&R. I think possibly over the last year, with everything that's been happening, it's probably gone by the wayside. I would imagine for those working with people who are homeschooling over the last year, same as the accountants we're talking to who are dealing with furlough, and all the just let's rip up the tax code and let's rip up the HMRC's guidance and start again and change things at the last minute, let alone those of us who haven't had a holiday. Let's take a moment to reflect now, for those who haven't had a holiday in 14 months.
I have.
Yeah, Jason has as well. There's only one of us on this call that hasn't.
But once John get the odd one out.
And it's we're having a countdown at the moment. Sorry, we're recording this at the start of February. I have a holiday booked for April, which is my Easter 2020 holiday that became my summer 2020 holiday, that became my October 2020 holiday, that I'm hoping is going to happen in Easter. But at the moment, it's pretty much on the toss of a coin whether it's going to happen or not.
Doubtful, I think. Yeah.
But I've said I've got 2 years worth of holidays to fit in at some point. Whether that turns into 3 years next year, I don't know. But it is important, isn't it, to actually step away? Like for my health and fitness journey, I've done a lot of high intensity interval training, and the people focus on the high intensity side of things, but actually the reason that works so well is the intervals. It's the rest period. Yeah. It's the fact that you are able to sprint for that long because you schedule in the rests. And so many business owners don't do that. They sprint and they sprint and they sprint until they are forced to rest.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's also kind of it's worthy kind of noting that not everybody kind of likes to just sit there and do nothing for days when they are resting. So for me, my idea of resting is kind of getting up and still feeling productive, but feeling productive in a different way. So we'll go out walking, we'll go out to the beach, or go, so we'll just go out and do things, but it's things that's allowing me to be busy, but with something that's not work related. Yeah.
Can you turn your brain off? In terms of your entrepreneurial brain, can you stop thinking about the business whilst you're walking on the beach?
I do. Yeah. It's taken me a good 10 years to get to that stage. I can now.
My next question is how?
It is hard. It is hard because you are always thinking, aren't you?
Yeah.
I
remember the last time I was on holiday, which was a couple of years ago now. And I remember going on holiday thinking, I want to switch off. So I bought a couple of audiobooks that were like non-business. I remember I bought Peter Crouch's autobiography and Kevin Bridges. I thought, fantastic, a comedian and a footballer. I'm going to spend pretty much 30 hours listening to these guys not talk about business. If people who are on my email list, they will have seen my emails about the 6 things that I learned from Kevin Bridges about how to write brilliant copy. And, I'm constantly referring to Peter Crouch's experiences with Tony Poulis, and that's part of my next book is referencing that. I can't switch off. I try and listen to something that isn't. I'm listening to Game of Thrones at the moment. So love the series. I'm now listening to the audiobook. Fantastic. That's my fiction to switch off. I've already created content for my social media posts, for my email sequence around stuff from the Game of Thrones book because I cannot switch off.
How many rude bits are in those bits of content?
Not as much as the TV.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I would be intrigued to see how you link business copy to Game of Thrones. I would actually be intrigued to see that.
There is a fantastic quote. I would tell you this. So there's a fantastic quote from Tyrion Lannister in the first book about why he reads books. And he says that my brother Jamie has his sword, King Robert has his big warhammer, and I have my mind. And the way you sharpen the sword is with the axe, and you sharpen the mind with books. And that's why I read so much.
Oh, okay.
So there we go. See? Which if I could switch off would have just washed over me and thought, that's nice.
Yeah.
I think books are an interesting thing though, because again, I think going back to what you were saying, Emma, really, that you can pick up the business books and you can read them all, but really what they're really doing is giving you distractions from probably what your plan is. You sound like you've nailed your plan now, which is brilliant. And actually switching those business books off means you've not been distracted by the ideas, the frameworks, and the suggestions that the business books can give you. So would you say that you've got yourself a plan now, and after 10 years, it's taken a lot of time to refine it, but you're there?
I think I'm just more selective with who I'm listening to rather than reading every single book. I'm just a bit more selective. So I will say, I really want to read that book. So I'll then read that book rather than just buying them all and feeling like I have to read all of them, Yeah.
You hear this, John?
Sorry?
You hear this?
I had this discussion with someone the other day about my Audible kind of, not wish list, sort of to listen to pile. So you imagine, with normal books, you've got a pile of books that you are going to read. Well, I've got a virtual version on my Audible, and there's currently over 20 books there.
Wow.
And I said to someone, well, I need to stop buying books. But the minute someone says, oh my God, this book's brilliant, I'm like, okay, because it's a credit and I've got credits sat there. And I said, well, I'm gonna read it eventually. It might take me 2-3 years to get round to it. And I'm reading books now that people recommended to me a couple of years ago, and I'm loving these books and they're great. And if that hadn't have been recommended to me 2 years ago, I wouldn't, because I now pretty much buy books on recommendation only, or authors that I know deliver good content. It's very rare that I would just buy a book on a whim. Sometimes I'll listen to a podcast, but it'll be a podcast that I already have a relationship with the host. I know I enjoy the podcast, and I'll listen to a guest. Oh, that person's interesting. Going to pick up their book. But it is. Sometimes again, you need to subtract all the information, all the noise from what you could be learning and could be doing to actually just focus on what works.
Yeah, I think also with what's happened over the last year, I think it's made me more laser focused in how I spend my time because I've had so little of it.
Yeah. How has that changed for you over the last year?
We've bizarrely had our best year ever. And that's mainly been because we've had lots of parents who are really worried about their children who just wanted extra support. So it's really good in that the business is thriving that way. But I think as people running the business, it's been very tiring. It's been quite testing. But at the same time, we've learned a lot in terms of what we need to focus on and maybe what tasks or systems we have in place in the business which can be kind of changed so that we don't need to use so much time up every single week towards those tasks. So I think it's allowed us to kind of streamline things. I keep kind of talking to staff about streamlining. We're like streamlining this month. We're streamlining. So it has kind of because time has been precious. We have been forced to streamline lots of different things. So I think it has helped us in that respect.
Have you got an example of a process which you've managed to streamline and the amount of time it kind of saves you and things, and maybe the app or the software or whatever it was that enabled you to do that?
Yes. So our website, we are just about to launch a new payment system. So we've basically had it coded so that it syncs, our website syncs with the booking software. So parents will come along, put in the invoice number, pay that invoice through Stripe, and then the invoice then gets logged as paid in our booking system. So I don't need to pay staff to sit and log bank transactions anymore because it will simply just do it itself, which is going to save loads and loads of time. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's interesting to think. People think about kind of growing their business, and often they think, well, that means I need more customers, or I need more staff, or I need to spend more money, ad spend, whatever. But actually improving your business rather than growing your business can mean streamlining. And that means that you might need a couple fewer staff members. Not than you've currently got, but it means you don't need to hire another 3 or 4 staff members. It means that you don't need as many customers. It means that your margins get higher. And as a result, you don't need to work as hard. And it is counterproductive to think, actually, everyone's focused on growing their business, but actually for many people, growing their business is the last thing they need to do. What they need to do is actually improve their business, streamline their business. Let's use that line, shall we? Streamline their business. It's interesting because how do people, you mentioned the staff, and you mentioned about streamlining to them. How have they reacted to that? Because I can imagine the former civil servant in me, if I heard the word streamlining, I'm thinking, oh, great, cutbacks.
No, because they now have less work to do on that particular task, but it then frees up their time to do another task better than they were before. So they're all kind of on board with the idea of streamlining every system down because it's going to make their life easier, and they will then be reallocated onto tasks that are focused on growing the business. So they all know that no one's hours are getting cut. It's just that we're going to then be looking elsewhere.
We have a good saying which we try to roll out almost weekly on our team calls, really, is what can we do better, or what can we do that's going to make your lives easier, and what system, what process can we put in place? What are you doing now that's taking all your time that you really hate doing? Can we find another way of making it, doing the same thing, but actually automating it, or whatever the case may be? So we try to look at that, certainly weekly, certainly monthly, and we try most weeks to kind of at least one part of the business go, right, actually, how can we make this easier or better or cheaper, or let's see if we can rule it out. So I love that. And as you say, John, it helps your business kind of grow, really, because they can focus then on the things which brings in the business, the revenue generating tasks, or whatever else. Fabulous.
And I think I've also learned that from listening to your calls as well, is because I think you both talk about it so much that I've kind of over the past 2 years of being part of the club, I think I've kind of taken that on board, I think. So every time something goes wrong now, my mind goes, okay, that was my fault, even though it wasn't me that did it. It was my fault because I'm the one in charge of the business and I haven't put in place the process that allowed it to go right. So therefore, we now need to put in place a process so it goes right from now on. And thinking in that way has allowed us to change so much, and things run pretty much like clockwork now. So it's just kind of asking that question to myself whenever things happen. What can we change in terms of a process so that this doesn't happen again? And I think if business owners ask themselves that more often, they would probably move their business forward quicker.
And the blame and the anger kind of goes away with it. Then it's like, oh, you screwed up again, rah! And it's not actually. Then that kind of it dissipates, and actually the whole workplace is a much nicer environment, isn't it? I guess.
I don't even dwell on the fact that it's gone wrong. I'm like, okay, that's happened. Right, next step, and we kind of move forward to kind of solve it. Yeah.
We kind of said, I think I was on our team meeting the other day. It might have been a 1% Club meeting. We said, if things go wrong, there should only be 2 reasons that it's gone wrong. Number 1, there's a problem with the process, and we haven't designed the process correctly. As you said, that's my fault. Number 2 is you haven't followed the process properly. So which one is it? Is the process wrong, or have you not followed the process? And as you alluded to just now, either way, that's your fault, because you're the business owner and the buck stops with you. So if someone isn't following the process correctly, that's because you haven't put a system in place to make them follow the process properly.
Train them up,
So
I was interested actually because just a few minutes ago, you said you've been a member of 1% Club for about 2 years. At the very beginning, we saw you a little bit on some of the coaching calls and things, and then you've kind of not been involved. A few times you pop up in our Facebook group answering questions or asking questions. But how do you use the 1% Club? Because we know lots of people use it in different ways, but how do you use it?
So I use it. I basically kind of dial in and kind of listen to all of your calls. Again, I guess the whole idea of working my business life around me, I will do that whenever it suits me. So I'm often kind of working whenever you have your calls. So I kind of listen in on them afterwards, and I kind of take snippets from there. I listen to your podcast, and again, I take snippets from that. I like to go on and kind of ask questions. If I've got a burning question, actually, this is the really good thing about it, is in the past 2 years, if I've ever had a question or a problem and I've put a question up in the group, there's always someone in there that can answer it. And I've usually solved it within about an hour, or I know someone to contact to help me with that problem. So that's how I use it. And actually, if I look back over the last 2 years, we've got a lot of people working around the business in terms of web designers, accountants, lawyers, and all of those contacts I have met through the club. And they're probably some of the best people I've worked with over the last 10 years. They really know their stuff, and there is no way that I would go anywhere else now, because they are the best people in their field, and I wouldn't have met them if I hadn't have been in the club. So it has helped me to grow my business through the people I've met in there, but also all the little nuggets that I've been kind of looking at in the group or listening to.
How do you treat that? So when you're watching the replays of the coaching calls, obviously, so these are people listening that don't know, these are kind of 90-minute Zoom calls. We've been doing Zoom calls for years now, guys. So a 90-minute group Zoom call, myself and Jason kind of hosting it, and people come on like a hot seat and may ask a question. Obviously, as you're watching the replay, you're not asking a question that's relevant to your business. You don't necessarily know when you start watching that replay what questions are going to be asked over the next 90 minutes. How do you apply a filter to what you're watching to go, right, how am I going to apply this to my business? Is it a case of I'm going to think about that question for my business and how I could interpret this answer that maybe a dog walker or an accountant is giving, and apply that to my business? Or do you just let it kind of wash over you in terms of osmosis and think, okay, I need to see what the high level decisions are here?
I guess the question I always ask myself when I'm listening to it is, how could I use that? What could I do with that? Mm-hmm. And then usually something pops up in my head and say, oh, you could do this, this, and this, or it doesn't. So some of it kind of links and would work for me. Yep. But others don't. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Because I think back to, I've been part of groups like this for, crikey, 8-9 years now. And I know when I go to when I'm allowed to go to a physical session face-to-face like this, a group kind of mastermind setting, I know that I get more out of other people's questions and other people's hot seats than I do from my own. I go there with my own problem, my own question, and I get answers and I go, yeah, I kind of knew that. And then someone else will ask a question and I'll either go, okay, yeah, well, and I'll just go down this little road, this little train of thought that, oh, I wonder if I could do that in my business. Well, I could do if I did this and I tweaked this. Mm. But more often than not, it's, oh my God, I never even thought of asking that question.
Yeah.
It was one of those, you don't know what you don't know, and because you don't know it, you're never going to kind of even consider it. And even within our group, you've got people banging on about funnels and things at the moment, but actually you would never have heard of what a funnel was for lots of business owners, because that's not something that would be top of their pile of learning about. And actually just even hearing about funnels, like, oh, what's a funnel and how does that work? And actually that, as you say, you don't know what you don't know, so you don't know what questions to ask if you don't know what it is you've got to know about, is it? So absolutely, you'll get that. So listening to other people's questions means that you kind of go, oh, that could relate to me, or actually, I never knew I had a problem with that. I never knew there was a way of solving that problem that you've got, and there is, and that's amazing. So I can do that for me now, and absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. I think the other thing I kind of notice is occasionally some people will say, "Oh, that won't work for me. My business is different. My business doesn't apply. I'm an accountant. I can only learn from other accountants. I work in this industry. I need ideas from my own sector." And people aren't able to see that you can take an idea from an accountant and you can apply it to a hairdresser.
I think you have to have that kind of business mindset. So obviously, you were linking business stuff to like Game of Thrones, you have to be able to kind of listen to things and then instantly be able to link that back to what you're doing all the time. Yeah.
That's what we need. More accountants that are into Game of Thrones. That's what we need.
They're counting their coins. So thinking about numbers, Emma, what does your business look like today?
So today we have about 45 staff working with us. Mm-hmm. We see around 350 pupils every single week across Torbay and South Devon. And 65 of those have special educational needs. So, our work is varied because during the day we tend to have a lot of children who come and see us and have almost like their school day with us. Mm-hmm. So they'll maybe come in for kind of like 2 hours a day and kind of have one-to-one teaching. And that's working really well because it's something that they weren't able to access in mainstream school. Mm. A lot of the children we have been kicked out of lots of schools. Of lots that have maybe been kind of involved in crime since the age of maybe 12 or 13. So we're dealing with really challenging children. But it's a way of teaching that works because we're totally, tailoring the learning around that child.
It makes such a difference, doesn't it, to actually... We've experienced this. Obviously, my wife's a tutor now as well. I made the mistake the other day of saying that she's not a teacher anymore. And she's like, "I am a teacher. I will always be a teacher."
You always are in here.
But yeah, it's we've discussed it as it's just the school system is set up. It's a little bit round peg, square hole, and we've got a system. If you fit the system, happy days. Crack on, but if you don't quite fit the system, the system will fail you. It will let you down. Yeah.
So I guess what our job is to kind of get them in and kind of allow them to get their functional skills, GCSEs, and then we then kind of help them on the road to kind of post 16 and getting them back into college where things are a little bit more relaxed than school anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And own choice. And
yes,
they choose,
of course. Yeah, you can choose then
choosing the interest that they want to do. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, as this is called the Ambitious Lifestyle Business Podcast, what does that mean to you?
An ambitious lifestyle business is basing my business around my life. I have always worked my business around my children. So that might mean that whilst they're kind of killing each other in soft play, I've been kind of, doing a few quick kind of work things on my phone, or whilst they're kind of digging on the beach, I'll quickly be reading a quick business book or writing down some notes or something. So it's about slotting in business around your life, essentially.
Yeah. As opposed to the other way around.
Yes.
Trying to fit your life in around your business.
Yes. Yeah.
I think there is an evolution here, I say, because if you think about your journey 10 years ago, it was very much you had to do what you had to do to pay the bills and to keep the doors open.
Yeah.
There reaches a point where you don't need to do that as much, but habit and, dare I say, routine, my first use of the routine bell, works so that you just automatically do what you've always done. And if you've been running 100 mile an hour in one particular direction, you just keep running, even though you don't need to anymore. And actually, you've built up enough resilience there that, do you know what? You could probably work a 50-hour week now and actually have a life. You might, at one point, I might actually better have a holiday and switch off and, sit by a pool reading a book by a footballer and not think, oh, how could I apply that to my business?
Yeah. And I think it's when you've been doing it for so long, you kind of understand what's worth doing and what isn't worth doing, don't you? And you can kind of laser focus on the tasks that are going to push your business forward and make you money. And the rest is all just fluff, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware of this or whatever, but you just used a line there, which is the subtitle from my book of the year from last year. So my book of the year last year was Derek Sivers' book, Hell Yeah or No. Subtitle, What's Worth Doing?
There you go.
And that's what it comes to. It is actually dictating what is worth doing. We're all investors. We've all got a finite amount of time, money, energy, and resources to allocate to anything we do. Yeah. Whether it's our families, our partners, our parents, our finances, our health, our fitness, I've said children already, haven't I? Our business. We've only got finite resources to allocate, and we decide where to allocate those resources. So if your business has enough resources, look at what other areas of your life could benefit from some attention. And vice versa. If you're at the very, very early stage of that business and you need to keep the doors open, then it may be, I can't believe I'm giving this advice, but it may be that you need to skip a bit of sleep and do a bit of hustle and work your ass off for a period until that business doesn't need so much attention anymore.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. We didn't talk awards. Let's briefly touch on that. So you met Theo Prophetus?
I did, yes. I did, yes.
How did that come about?
So I entered myself for, Small Business, I think Small Business Sunday on Twitter. And Theo basically does this kind of small business hour basically on Twitter. And he chooses 4 businesses every single Sunday. So I was selected as one of them. And then what he does is he invites all those people to then join him in Birmingham every February. So I kind of went along, and it was held in, I think, the NEC in Birmingham. So he basically hired out this massive big kind of hall. And he basically put on kind of loads of people for the whole day, like speakers. So like Google were there, there's loads of different speakers.
Wow.
And it was amazing. So we got to kind of line up and meet him and shake his hand and talk to him. And then
I'm guessing this wasn't 2020 that this happened, was it?
It was. No, it was. So his team basically made us kind of gel our hands before we kind of shook his hand. And he was, to be fair, he was looking really anxious because you could tell that he didn't want to be shaking people's hands back then. Yeah.
It's lucky it was February and not kind of April,
March. Yeah, and then we got to listen to Sarah Davies do a talk with Theo actually on stage. They did like a 2-hour kind of Q&A. And she was just awesome. She was amazing.
Has Jason ever told you that he met Deborah Meaden once?
Oh, have you?
That popped up in my memories yesterday, a couple of days ago. I nearly shared it again. Yeah. And Judy Spires at the same time. But Deborah Meaden.
Yeah. Most of our listeners won't know who Judy Spires are unless they used to watch Pebble Mill about 30
Pebble Mill,
years ago.
yeah. national treasure.
National treasure, yeah, particularly locally.
Amongst those people who have hands up rabbits' bottoms. Yeah.
Okay, that's really random now for most of the listeners of this podcast. Just Google Gus Honeybun, that's all I'm going to say. Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us, Emma.
Thank you.
Any
Welcome.
parting words of wisdom for us? Or actually, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
So you can reach us on our website, which is www.rivierattuition.co.uk, or on Facebook and Twitter.
Fab. Thank you very much, Emma.
Thank you.
So there we are, another episode in the can. How was it for you? Please let us know. However you listen to these podcasts, please leave a review on that platform. Let us know what we can do better, what you like, what you don't like, and how we can improve to make this show even better for you. We'll see you next time.